Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy says that a ship carrying Ukrainian grain has been hit by a Russian missile in the Black Sea. He posted these images showing the damaged vessel on social media. Ukraine says the ship was in waters off the coast of NATO member Romania when it was hit. Zelenskyy is calling for a global response to what he says is a direct attack on vital shipping routes and global food security. No casualties have been reported in this attack. Well, I'm joined now by Ian Ralby. He's a maritime analyst at the Center for Maritime Strategy in Baltimore in the United States. He joins me now from Hawaii. It's good to have you with us. We want to be clear here. Ukraine blames Russia, but Moscow has yet to comment on this attack. If it is Russia, why would it attack a grain ship now? Do we know?
Well, thanks very much. We're early in this whole situation, and we have to be very careful to jump to too many conclusions. But this certainly does look like Russia. It was a Russian Tupolev Tu-22 jet that seems to have fired the missiles that struck the ship. And we have to start understanding what might be going on. Earlier this week, we saw Russia send 2 shipments of grain for the first time to Egypt. This ship was Ukrainian grain heading for Egypt. We have to begin asking whether this may be Russia's new attempt to try to block certain supply chains and preserve newfound market space as the war continues to develop. Russia is also working much more closely with the Houthis out of Yemen, and we've seen ships being allowed to go from Sevastopol in occupied Crimea to Hodeida. And the access of the Russians to Houthi thinking may actually indicate that they are being inspired by the wanton attacks on shipping that have gone relatively unanswered thus far in the Red Sea. And so Russia may feel emboldened by the ability to strike commercial shipping and interrupt supply chains for its own benefit.
Mr. Ralby, I want to be clear on this then. If that is the case, if Russia is trying to maybe take a market that Ukrainian grain has enjoyed, this would be an act of economic war that we're talking about, then wouldn't it?
That's absolutely correct. And thus far, Russia has shown since the 24th of February 2022 a flagrant disregard for international law. So it's not surprising that they would continue to pile on as their casualties mount, as their ability to use the Black Sea diminishes, given their own Black Sea fleet being mostly on the bottom of the Black Sea itself. And so this may be a new phase of Russian aggression in order to preserve its attempt at gaining some kind of victory in Ukraine.
The attack happened, as we understand it, outside Romanian territorial waters, but within Romania's economic zone. Can you explain what this means and whether NATO would consider this an attack on the territory of a NATO member?
Well, Russia loves to play brinksmanship, and this is right on the brink. But unfortunately, it is not inside the sovereign territorial jurisdiction of Romania, and thus does not automatically trigger Article 5 of NATO. So we are not looking at an immediate situation where this would be considered an armed attack on a NATO ally. However, it is right on the line. And so we have to ask the question why this ship was traversing outside of the territorial sea, which obviously does not afford it the same protections as if it was engaged in innocent passage through Romania's waters. But from a legal standpoint, there is no immediate attack on the sovereignty of Romania. Okay. However, we have to be very concerned that Russia feels emboldened enough to be so close. And this does bring up the question of how secure that grain corridor from Ukraine through Romania is going to be as we go forward.
And before I let you go, I just want to be clear on this. The ship that was attacked was not in what's considered the secure shipping route that Ukraine created along the coast after Russia pulled out of the Black Sea grain deal last year. So can you think of a reason why the ship would veer off course?
Unfortunately, the absence of harm does not mean the absence of danger, but the absence of harm sometimes makes us complacent. And so I don't know why the ship would be outside of that, other than that there has not been an attack. The last incident really was last August with the armed boarding of the Sukhoi Okran heading into Ukraine. So this has been a time of few incidents, very few attacks on commercial shipping, and we've only seen one incident that even comes close to this level of hostility towards commercial shipping, and that was in the very early days when the Helt was sailed into a minefield and unfortunately sank. So this is a major development and a huge concern, given the already overwhelming amount of strain that the global commercial shipping industry is under. It puts our supply chains of everything, and not just our food supplies, in danger, but certainly food security should be on everybody's mind as we look at the thin margins on which we're already operating.
Ian Ralby with the Center for Maritime Strategy. Mr. Ralby, it's good to have you on. Good to get your valuable analysis on this. Thank you.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
Our correspondent, Rebecca Ritters, she is following the story for us from Kyiv. Rebecca, what more do we know about this attack?
Well, Brent, the Ukrainian Navy reported that this attack took place shortly after 11 p.m. last night in the Black Sea as a vessel, not a Ukrainian vessel, but a vessel containing Ukrainian wheat and grain had left Ukrainian waters, and they say that it was by a Russian missile. Now, they say Moscow is flouting the rules of war in this attack, and the foreign minister has called it a brazen attack on food security. As you just mentioned, Volodymyr Zelenskyy has also come out condemning this, posting on his Telegram channels those pictures that we just saw there, saying that while no one was hurt, wheat or food security should never be targets for missiles. He says he's waiting for the world to react, but just what kind of reaction we can expect to see from the international community isn't clear yet. We have heard from Romania. It says that the vessel wasn't in its territorial waters, and it says its naval authority has said that their assistance hasn't been requested. So just how big a reaction we're going to see from the international community, it remains to be seen. But we have seen on some indexes food prices, grain prices spiking. So that will certainly be in effect for the Middle East and Africa, who rely heavily on Ukrainian grain and wheat.
Yeah, Rebecca, that's right. A lot of the grain from Ukraine ends up in the Middle East. Remind us how this grain corridor is supposed to work to protect the ships that are leaving Ukraine.
Yeah, well, obviously after the full-scale invasion in 2022, grain exports were completely halted also from Russia, but Russia picked up exports pretty quickly after. It took Ukraine some more time to be able to negotiate a safe passage, which it eventually did. It negotiated with Russia through Ukraine and the United Nations, and they formed this Black Sea deal, as it was known, which allowed Ukrainian ships coming to Ukraine exporting the wheat and grain from here to have free passage. But there was a time limit on that agreement, and it did eventually expire in the summer of last year, forcing Ukraine to come up with some other kind of solution, which it did do in the name of this sort of maritime corridor that we're seeing being used today. It did that without Russian agreement, and it did it by conducting a drone and missile campaign, basically pushing back Russian warships further back off the coast in the Black Sea, and creating this maritime corridor very close to that western coast. It was considered relatively safe given the distance of the ships in the Black Sea, and of course the shallow waters making it very difficult for Russian submarines to be able to access. So until now has been considered relatively safe. We'll have to see if these attacks continue, whether it calls into question the safety of this route and whether it is able to continue.
DW's Rebecca Ritters with the latest tonight from Kyiv. Rebecca, thank you.